We go outside of our marketplace to get the inspiration. We talk to people like you, we talk to Dan, we talk to other operators, both in convenience stores, but as well food, bakery, all kinds of stuff.
You're listening to the Future of Convenience podcast, brought to you by Global Convenience Store Focus, featuring senior retail executives and experts in the global convenience, fuels, and mobility retail industry. Hosted by Dan Munford, Nick Scherzer, and Carolyn Schnare. Welcome to the Future of Convenience podcast. I'm Carolyn Schnare, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nick Scherzer. Nick, what's up?
Hey, Carolyn. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic. And today we're going to jump over to your side of the pond. We're going to speak with Jesper Østergaard, who is the managing director for Reitan Convenience Denmark, who operates 7-Eleven throughout Scandinavia. We're going to talk with him a little bit about brand positioning, strategy, and a whole lot more. Before we get started, I want to tell you about a Dande refrigeration. Ready to revolutionize your convenience store kitchen? Look no further than a Dande refrigeration. With a Dande's innovative patented technology, you'll enjoy a dramatic reduction in energy consumption compared to traditional refrigeration units. A Dande drawers offer large capacity and stackability, allowing you to optimize every inch of your storage area and maintain consistent, precise temperatures. Choose a Dande refrigeration for unmatched efficiency and performance made for your convenience. Visit dande.com to learn more. So Jesper, again, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We've talked over the years. We've had you on the show before. We've talked with you on some of our Shop Talk Lives. I know you've been a frequent visitor to some of our events, and I've had the pleasure of meeting you in person multiple times over the years. And I know you've been doing a bit of traveling around Europe. You've been on the conference circuit, if you would call it that. So what do we want to do? I want to talk a little bit about you. I want to find out more about Jesper. And specifically, we joked about it, but if you can actually pronounce your last name for me in Danish, because I think that sounds better than what I said.
Well, my name is in Danish, Østergaard. Not very easy, but that's the way it is in Danish. Østergaard is really fine.
I love it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your career so far and how you've gotten into convenience.
Perhaps a little strange, but already at the age of 14, I sort of made a business plan for myself. I wrote down in detail which kind of education I wanted to go through, which kind of job I wanted to have. And I think a lot of people around me was just laughing, but basically I've been doing what I decided to do when I was 14. So strangely enough, and I don't know why, but I had an idea at the age of 14 that retail was the place for me. I think retail is interesting, perhaps mainly because you're sort of, it's now and here. It's not in a year's time. You know exactly if you're doing right or wrong because you get feedback from your customers right away. So I think retail in general, no matter what kind of retail, is really interesting. And I thrive in retail. So my career really started at the age of 25. I had a Bachelor of Business Administration finished. And my first job was more or less a coincidence. I knew some people that was working for a Danish company as opticians in the optician industry. So they were selling glasses and contacts and stuff like that. And I started talking to them, and it was at that time a Danish company. They wanted to establish a new company in Norway. And I've always enjoyed traveling. I didn't know anything about glasses, so I thought, yeah, that's a job for me. And I started talking to the CEO, and I made a deal saying that I'll do this and this and this. Don't pay me a salary for the first 3 months. If I succeed, I want to have this salary. I want to do this and this. If not, I'll just go back home to Denmark again. And that's what we did. So that is how I started in retailing. That was in Norway. That was in the optician industry. So I was part of establishing a new market in terms of opening new stores, training new staff. It was really exciting. And I was working for that company for 6 years. And then I was headhunted. Well, basically, I started thinking of going back to Denmark. I've been in Norway for 6 years. And I was headhunted by Korn Ferry as CEO for Blockbuster, which depending on how old you are, you might remember.
Yes, but we remember Blockbuster.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. So I was headhunted to Blockbuster, and when I was contacted, I basically didn't know a lot about that industry at all. It's still retail, but it's a very different part of retail. The exciting part of that business is, of course, that it's entertainment. And it was really cool to work with something that made people happy, basically. I took the job. It was really a big turnaround job. Blockbuster Denmark was a huge loss maker, one of the worst blockbuster markets in the world at that time. And that, I think, is probably where I like to be in terms of making something work that doesn't work. So we started that journey, and it was really exciting. I was there for 8 years, and it was one of the biggest loss-making markets. And when I left, it was in the top 3 in terms of profitability in the world by store. So that was a great journey. Wow. And I stopped like probably 3 years before they went bankrupt. It was a fantastic time. I really enjoyed it, and I still, even today, so many years later, have staff around me that I have had with me from the Blockbuster times. That's really cool. And I would say at least once a week we talk about these years, because it was just a fantastic period of my life. So it's sad they're not around here anymore. They should have been the Netflix company, and they could have been, but some wrong decisions was taken at that time. So after 8 years, I felt that I had done what I could with that company. And again, slightly coincidence, I would say, I was headhunted for the role I still have today. When I was contacted and they told about the convenience industry, 7-Eleven in Denmark, I have to admit at that time I'd never been doing any kind of shopping in a 7-Eleven store anywhere in the world. So it was really new to me. But after some conversations, some meetings, I realized that, well, working with an American company, which I enjoyed during the Blockbuster time, but for a Norwegian company that had the license and still have the license for 7-Eleven in Scandinavia, that was a pretty good match, because I really liked my time in Norway. I enjoy working with Americans, so it was sort of a fantastic place to be. And I joined. I thought 3-4 years, and that's it. And now, close to 18 years after, I'm still here. So it's a really fantastic place to work.
Yes, but that's it's a really cool story, and thanks for sharing that with us. And I very clearly remember the first time I met you. It was actually in New York. You had joined us on a study tour, which was probably back in around 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
And we were walking on that study tour through Manhattan, looking at innovation in food service, both within convenience stores as well as QSRs. And I remember that clearly, and your focus and determination in terms of really looking for innovation and what people were doing differently, what appealed to customers. And part of that conversation we had back then was you were in the early part of the journey of thinking about how you transform 7-Eleven in Denmark. So maybe do you want to share with us a bit about thinking back to that time, where the 7-Eleven brand in Denmark was, and a bit of the journey over this period of time?
Yeah, definitely. It was and still is an exciting time, but we have developed a lot since. I remember that study tour, and it was one of the best tours I've ever been to. So I definitely remember that. Well, I think when I joined 7-Eleven Denmark and the Reitan Group, Reitan Retail, it was more or less the same challenge as I faced when I joined Blockbuster, namely that it was a huge loss maker. And there were some discussions when I joined whether we should leave the Danish market, because it was simply too complicated and it took too much effort to turn that around. But I got the chance to do that, and I had a lot of focus on cost cuttings and growing sales in the beginning of the period. At that time, we did not really understand that we had to totally change our strategy. I think after the study tour you talked about in 2010, I started realizing we simply have to change totally in the way we work, in the customer proposition, and everything, basically. And one of the reasons for I came to that conclusion was that at that time, we did have a strict legislation around opening hours in the Danish marketplace, meaning that late hours, late Saturdays, Sundays, and bank holidays, the only retailing that could be open was actually convenience. So we were having quite a lot of turnover coming from groceries. In 2010, just after the study tour you talked about, I realized that the Danish government actually started talking about liberalizing that law. And I just felt this is not only being some talks they have, they're definitely going to do that, because I mean, who should decide when the stores could be open? Basically, it should be the consumer. So that liberalization I really believed would happen. Therefore, we started talking in my management team about, so what does it take for us to basically survive? Because I knew when the legislation was changed, we would lose quite a lot of customers and turnover coming from groceries. The legislation changed and was liberalized in 2012. So about a year before that, we started discussing our new future strategy. And saying it in a very, very simple way, the mantra or the headlines was really, we want to transform a traditional kiosk into a food destination. And that is still our main goal. We are still working on that strategy. Why did we decide to do that? Well, basically, the majority of our turnover and profitability came from traditional categories like newspapers, magazines, tobacco, gaming, electronical services. Like, for instance, at that time, people could go into a 7-Eleven store and pay their bills. And with the development in digital and general consumer changes, we realized it's all declining. So looking 5 years ahead, not doing any changes, we would have been out of business. There wouldn't have been customers coming to our stores. So basically what we said is, we cannot foresee all the changes that will happen the next 20 years. But there's one thing that probably won't change, and that is that we want to eat and drink every day. So we said we have to build our business around food and beverages. And that's what we basically started doing in 2011. And that was a very exciting time, but at the same time, it took a lot. It was basically a 360-degree change in all kinds of aspects, in the customer proposition, in the store layout, in the operations team, the skills at the support office. We said goodbye to quite good category managers, but decided that if we want to become the best player in convenience food, we need chefs, we need bakers to work with the products and product development. So a lot of people were leaving, a lot of new people was coming on board. I would say 60% of the franchisees at that time left us, or we asked them to leave, because we simply couldn't see them operating a huge range of products with very short shelf life. That's so different compared to where we came from. So that's where we are today. And we are currently, I would believe I know in the 7-Eleven world, if we look at all the 7-Eleven markets, there are only 2 markets that are selling more food products per day per store than we do, and that's actually Japan and Hawaii. So I think we've come far. We are selling close to 600 food products per day per store. On top of that comes bakery, so we don't add these 2 categories. So we have become a destination for food and beverages, and we are very happy about that. It's been successful, but then, again, as you sort of has talked about as well, what is the next then? How can we continue to grow? And that is where we are right now. We see some changes again, but I'm pretty sure that we will continue our growth in Denmark.
Yeah, but yes, but just reflecting on that transformation and that journey over the last decade or so, and I think to put it into context for the listeners who haven't visited Copenhagen, it's amazing what an institution 7-Eleven is when you're in the city as a visitor. And it's really become part of the fabric of society there, if I can put it like that. And when you spoke earlier, you were talking about the fact that when you took over, 7-Eleven was a loss-making business, and it really wasn't well positioned for the future. And I think, credit to you and your team for both the vision, but then the execution of having delivered that, moved those stores from traditional kind of kiosk selling traditional kiosk products to food destinations within the city. And yeah, like I say, I mean, we were there with you, I think it was early last year, with a group of international retailers and
Mm.
spent 2 days in the market. And I think everyone was really blown away by the store formats, the feel, the look, and then the food product offer is amazing. But yeah, it kind of points to that challenge of what the future, how do you keep reinventing and taking it forward? But maybe if we just touch on something we were talking about earlier, in the summer, you do some very cool things with pop-up stores. Tell us a bit
Yes.
about that.
Yeah. One of the ways we have been growing our business is actually trying to reach more customers in the country than just operating normal traditional physical stores. And over the last 5-7 years, we have really been attending a lot of music festivals, all kinds of gatherings, where we simply set up pop-up stores. And I think we have been positively surprised about how much revenue we can actually drive through these very simple pop-up stores. There are two sides to this. First of all, of course, we would like to increase our turnover and profitability. But secondly, it is a fantastic opportunity of showing our brand in different places in the country than just a normal store. And we get so much positive feedback, people, coming to these pop-up stores. Well, wow, it's like going to my own normal 7-Eleven store back home, and all the people that drives or operates the stores for us, they're actually coming from this physical store. So they think it's really exciting to be there as well. It's really like one big party for 3 days. So that has been a big part of our growth. Our communication in general has been important around these events. Another way we have been growing our business is that we have been looking into different segments, like we are now pretty big in hospitals. When we started this, the very first biggest university hospital in Denmark was extremely sort of skeptic, allowing us to operate a store, and they thought it was becoming too commercial and stuff like that. So just to give an example, when we opened the first hospital store 10 years ago, we were not allowed to have any kind of signage. The staff could not wear uniforms. It's crazy. It sounds crazy now.
Oh, wow.
But we proved that it was a good combination. And we are now operating stores at all hospitals in Denmark, basically. So that was another way to increase our business. A third way is that we have been sort of spotting traffic hubs. Where do we have a lot of people gathered in the country? We should operate stores there. So for years, we have actually been trying to get access to Copenhagen Airport. We have been operating 3 stores there for 10 years, but wanted to grow. And finally, about a year ago, we won a tender, meaning that we now operate 11 physical 7-Eleven stores in Copenhagen Airport. We operate 1 cafe, and we operate 89 vending machines, branded 7-Eleven. So no matter where you land or take off from in Copenhagen Airport, you will see us everywhere. It's really amazing.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the train stations as well, the Danish,
Yes.
I don't know what you call them, but the Danish National Train Station Network, where I know you've worked very closely with them, collaborating.
Exactly. Thank you for reminding me. We have a fantastic partnership, which is for many strange, because it's a partnership with a state-owned company. That doesn't happen very often in our part of the world, at least. For many, many years ago, we decided that, of course, we had to be present on railway stations. And we tried to acquire the existing convenience business that they operated themselves. The state-owned company decided that they were not prepared to sell, and therefore we thought, okay, the second best solution could be to establish a partnership with them. So the way it works is basically, and has been working like that now for more than 11 years, is that we built the stores, we have the branding, we have the product range. It's basically, from a consumer point of view, you wouldn't notice whether you go into one of our so-called own franchise stores or you go into a state-operated store. It works really well. We have a fantastic cooperation, and these stores today accounts for 40% of our top line. So they're really important.
Wow.
And I'm happy you mentioned that, Caroline, because actually the biggest 7-Eleven store in the world, and I remind you of that there are more than 85,000. The biggest in terms of turnover is in Copenhagen Central Station. So that's really
Oh.
amazing. That's so I was there yesterday with my board, and it actually has close to 6,000 customers a day. So that's a really
That's an
busy store.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an incredible store.
Yeah.
I've been to that store as well, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not the only store in that station either. So
That is true.
that's the busiest one, and there's one kind of across the concourse from it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's basically I think they are 25 meters from each other, so it's really amazing. But one end of the central station serves the metro lines, the other one more long distance trains. So it's different types of
Okay.
customers, and they are both of them, I would say, in the top 5 biggest 7-Eleven stores in the world in terms of turnover. So that's really amazing.
That's amazing.
Mm.
Yeah. Yes, but just coming back to that question we touched on earlier, which was then thinking about one of the biggest challenges, I think, for retailers anywhere in the world is how do you keep on reinventing, and I guess part of that reinvention is continually providing customers with something new, interesting, different, as well as just evolving with the times. Earlier this year, you were in London with Dan Munford, ran a study tour looking at food innovation in London, where there's always cool things happening. What did you see on that tour, and kind of did that give you any thinking, or just in general what your thinking is in terms of some of the future trends and what the future looks like for food and convenience?
Yeah, it was a great tour, as they are always very inspiring. But I think that tour in particular took us to stores that were, I would not say traditional convenience stores, but it really opened our
Sure.
eyes in terms of specialty stores. Like we visited a small bakery, which I was so impressed about. They only have one store, and I think from what I recall, they have several thousand followers on Instagram. It's really amazing. So we got a lot of great ideas. The secret in terms of how we continue developing ourselves is really linked to the fact that we travel. We go outside of our marketplace to get the inspiration. We talk to people like you, we talk to Dan, we talk to other operators, both in convenience stores, but as well food, bakery, all kinds of stuff. Even going to Manhattan, visiting retailers, selling shoes or whatever is inspiring, because it's just the way you treat your customers, the way you build an atmosphere around buying perhaps a simple product. So I think the traveling is really, the tours we visit or attend are where we get the good ideas. If we just go around in our own marketplace, we will never see anything really new, because it's just copying somebody else, right? Basically, it's copying something from perhaps London or the US as well. But we prefer to be the first one in our marketplace. So these study trips are extremely important. On top of that, I mean, if you want to be the winner, you have to have the best skilled people on board. So we are doing quite a lot when it comes to recruitment, both at store level and support office. And I would say I'm in a fantastic situation. I simply have the best team around me. So that's really exciting. But there's no doubt these tours means a lot for us. And some of our best-selling products over the last 10 years are products we have got inspired from for instance, New York or the UK or somewhere else in the world.
That's truly fascinating. I know I hear that again and again from retailers, is you just have to look outside of your borders. You have to travel internationally, whether that's coming over here or our folks going over there. So that's really enlightening that you said that. And I know you said it's not even reinvention, but I kept thinking the word redefining. You just redefining retail in Denmark, especially. So kudos to you on that. And one of these days I'm going to get over there and see it.
You are very much welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I think this has been really enlightening. It's been great to learn your story. I mean, I think at 14, I have a 15-year-old who isn't even like an ounce of the motivation you have. So I think your next career can be professional motivator, because you really, how to make a life plan, how to keep going. And maybe I'll even call you myself. So I appreciate you sharing that story with us.
Thank you so much, Carolyn.
Yeah.
Yes, but as always, thank you for joining us, and thanks for sharing your story, and hope to see you again in Copenhagen very soon.
Sure. Thanks.
And thank you so much for listening to The Future of Convenience. You've been listening to the Future of Convenience podcast, produced by Dan Munford, Nick Scherzer, Jenna Ferguson, and Lorraine Evans. It is produced, edited, and mixed by Carolyn, Schnare, and music is provided by Jukebox Music. Tune in every other Friday for new episodes, and please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Learn more at globalconveniencestorefocus.co.uk.